Hey, welcome back to MobilityWOD. Today I want to talk about the influence of torso lean and torso position on hip mobility. And here's one of the things as you're programming for your athletes, as you're kind of working on kind of developing better postures for things like soldiers, fighting, for people being stand-up. You can imagine that most of the sports we engage in, torso is upright cutting. The issue is that sometimes in our training we don't force an upright torso. So if you're not doing a lot of things that look like overhead squats or loaded demands that keep the torso really upright, at some point you're going to have a problem because you're probably hiding some of the hip range of motion problems. So here's our goal. A little quick test I want to show you guys, and I'd like you to try this at home. We're going to basically jump from the bottom up, and we're going to land in that bottom squat position. Now here's the deal. We showed this the other day. We went from a position of high stability, kind of from the top, down to a position of high stability without connection. That was kind of one of the ways. Well, one of the things that we do is imagine going from a sprawl, which is a position of not high stability. In fact, it's a transitional position. And I go from this kind of transitional position, a position that doesn't look like I'm already organized, and I have to spontaneously develop organization. And this is what happens when suddenly have an athlete have to cut, or go for a ball, or an athlete who's fighting, or have to get up. I'm a soldier, and I get up from a sprawl and have to cut directions. And this is where we want to be thinking about unlocking kind of the problems of those positions. So what you're going to notice is that as the demands of the torso come more upright, that the demands on the hip mobility come upright. And this is where we start to see athletes significantly fall apart in the thoracic spine. They start to fall apart in the lumbar spine trying to compensate. If I'm a soldier, for example, carrying a very large heavy backpack, 100 pounds, and I have some body armor on, and I don't have good hip range of motion, and because I'm wearing a combat boot, my ankle range of motion is taken away, or you're watching the Niners play and they've taken away all those guys' ankle range of motion with their ankles by taping them, then we're going to have to see something give. So here's what I want you to do. We're going to jump from the bottom up, and again, this is from the top down, but I'm going to land spontaneously in a good position. If you feel like this is going to injure you, you probably shouldn't squat anyway. So I'm just going to jump and land in a bottom position. Note feet slightly turned out, 5 to 10 degrees of torque. Knees don't gimbal, stable, back straight. But look what's happened. I've landed in a back squat position. Forward, kind of classically back squat, which is a narrower stance, torso forward, very athletic, but forward inclination of the torso. So suddenly now, as I apply this and I say, hey, let's front squat, and we'll front squat just by putting our hands behind our head. And now, the demands of having to keep the torso upright are much higher, and subsequently you're going to start to see more knees do crazy things and feet do crazy things. Because I'm removing connection, I'm not in a pre-organized position, and I have to keep the torso upright. This is why we do things like wall ball. This is why we do things like burpees. So I have to jump and land in a stable position immediately, trying to keep the torso upright. If I'm weak or soft, you'll see these problems, and we start to see this happen, where breaking in the low back to keep the torso upright. Okay, last one. If you think you are a true leopard, arms above your head, and look, what I'm doing is snatching. So I'm just going to lock my arms over my head, torso is upright, I'm going to land in that bottom position, no knee gimbal, back straight, down, up, stable, trying to keep the torso upright. And what's nice about this gives you suddenly access to what's going on with the athletes in terms of their hip mobility, what's going on with the ankle, what's going on with their motor control. It doesn't take weight, and you can make the invisible visible is what my mother-in-law says. And now we have a meaningful tool to quickly diagnose movement problems. MobilityWOD, post your results to comments.